Hello everyone, welcome back. I hope the last video about writing cues in Lightforge helped kind of clear up some understanding on how it works. Like I said, if it didn't, let me know and I can sit down with you one-on-one. Though now I would like to talk about effects. So an effect does all of the cool stuff, essentially. So I'm going to go to Lord, I Need You. And one of the things that I think a lot of people don't realize is when you're writing cues, there's not someone up at the soundboard like putting faders up and down to make the movers like go in a circle, to move all the time, to make lights turn on and off with the music, etc., etc. Everything that happens like that is an effect. So you can see up here we have our effects menu, and we have a bunch of different effects, and they all are applied. When you click an effect, it's applied to the lights that are selected. So I'm going to click the movers, and I'm going to click a circle effect. When the effect goes into place, you can see right here it is dark, and there's a green, it's selected green, and rate offset influence is a 0. This means it's in standby. That means it's dark because it means it's in standby. I can put the rate at full, offset at full, influence at full. Nothing is happening. You can see the pan and tilt isn't moving. That's these little circles here. Until I right click on the up here. And if I right click, you can see now the movers are going in a circle. And you can see down here, circle. Same thing happens if there's a square. If you want to do a square, let's see here. We'll put the rate up, offset, influence, randomness. So you can see that the lights are moving in a square now. And, this is a pretty big square. If you think about it, the lights can move quite a bit. So this would actually equate lights freaking out. Essentially, you just have to play with it until you get the effect that you want. You can set influence however you want. But say I get this square effect how I want, and I want to add it to the cue. You do it the same way you do anything else. So if you have an effect running and you add a cue, it's going to automatically be put in that cue. Or if you want to add an effect to the cue, you update the cue just like you would do anything else. So if I want that effect in this cue, I'm just going to click update, add to the cue. Now you can see here that this green line happened underneath. That means that this cue now has that effect built in. So no matter what I do elsewhere, I can go to Lord, I Need You, etc., etc., and there's not going to be an effect. You can see if I click on anything, no effects pop up here. If I go back to Lord, I Need You, and click on the movers, you can see that there's an effect here, and you can also see that influence is fading up. That brings me to my next thing. So say if I want to take out the effect in the next cue, if I just click X, add a cue, next cue, you can see that the effect only goes to here. This is because effects have been designed to fade in and out automatically with cues. So if they're in a cue, they fade up with that cue. If they're supposed to get out of a cue, they fade down with that cue. Any attribute named influence up here. If you choose an effect that doesn't have influence up here, that basically means that it won't fade in and out by itself. The other option that is more advanced, and I hardly use it because it is more advanced and I don't need it, that option, is actually keyframing effects. So anybody familiar with editing video will know what keyframes are, and this does the same thing. Say I'm going to add a new effect here. So let's say I want the blinders, and let's put them on an intensity chase, and we'll do pretty quick and have influence at full. So you can see here that they're chasing each other all the way around. So I'm going to add that next cue, and I'm going to call it blinders chase. Okay, so if we click the blinders, you can see here that in and out are automatically there. They're automatically selected, which means that this is going to fade in and it'll fade out once, if in the next cue, if I get rid of that effect, it's going to fade out. If I deselect these, take a look what happens. Once I take this cue up here, watch this, it instantly does that. So this is powerful if you want to do some more advanced features. If you click on this thing right here, that's a keyframe. So that means that you can set, you can tell the cursor's up there. The cursor is right here. I can add a keyframe. So if I just change the influence down, if I change a value in the cue, it's going to put that there. And it's going to fade from the keyframe at full to the keyframe at 5%. And then let's say right here in the cue, I want the influence to be up, but I want the rate to be down, like 8%. Now we'll see exactly how it works. I don't use this very often, so this is kind of an experiment for me too. But if I click the cue, instantly it's going to be that, then it's going to have just a little bit, and then it's going to fade to doing it slow. So you can see that each keyframe, you can have different settings in the effect inside of the cue. The thing is that the keyframe timeline right here is not limited to one cue. So if I add another cue, and I just name it blah, you can see now, I'm going to select this, and there's an effect. See where my cursor is and where my keyframes went? My keyframes are still in this cue where they're supposed to be, but there's a lot more space now here. That means if I want in this cue at this specific time, we'll just say right there with the cursor, if I want the rate to go crazy again, I'll put it in a different keyframe. Now, keep in mind that it fades between keyframes, so even if it stops right here, it's going to be halfway in the fade between this keyframe and this keyframe. So that means that, right here, it's going to do its thing. It's going to take that keyframe, then this keyframe, and then it's going to fade to this part, and it's going to start taking the next keyframe. Basically what I'm saying is keyframes don't stop because your cursor has stopped. Keyframes could still be half taken if your cursor stopped. It's just going to half take the keyframe. And then you see if I take the next cue, it's going to fade up to that keyframe, and it's just going to be there. So that's a little overview of keyframing effects. That's, like I said, that's advanced. All that I really ever use, let me delete these. I'm going to shift click both of these and hit delete. Most of the time, I just use the fade in and fade out. So let's do intensity fade. We'll just do that. Add a cue. Fading. If you click, if you click on the cue, you can see fade in, fade out is selected. It's going to fade in with the cue that it's told to be on, fade out with a cue that it's told to be off. That's really all I ever use. If you want to get fancy, you can use keyframes. But yeah, it's up to you. So let's look at kind of some of the effects. These are the effects that are standard. If you click effects menu, you can see all of the effects ever. Some of them work great, some of them don't work great. Just experiment. So we can do stuff, we can do random flash. You can see if I take the influence at full and then do the rate, you can see that they're just randomly flashing, just depending on how you do it. Let's see, audio intensity. This one's kind of cool. It takes audio from the input to the lighting console, and and it translates it to light. So I actually wrote this effect. So I will say it's not perfect, but you can gain the audio input. The influence, obviously, that does the same thing that all the other influence sliders do. The gate, a gate is essentially just what you think it will only let, if I have the gate at 24% or 38% or whatever, it's only going to let audio, it's only going to be effective. The audio is only going to be effective if it is above the value of, say, whatever 23% corresponds to. So the gate is useful if you have some hum in your line or whatever. It will only get the peaks. And then also I've included light change speed. Essentially what this does is that this will just change the light that the audio gets, the audio effect gets applied to in the group that you've selected. So it just does it. So if I have at 8% and let's see if I can get the lights to turn on here. I don't know if I can. Well, there's no audio going into the computer. Oh, let me see here. Okay, so let's see if it will actually, I don't know if it's gonna, I'm gonna see if it can go to my voice. Settings, where is it? Oh, use audio input. We'll try to use the microphone, the snowball that I'm using. I'm using a snowball to record this on. So check out what's happening as I'm talking in the mic. It's changing the light speeds here based on my voice, and otherwise it's just gonna have them all come on at the same time. And the gate does, so if I talk loud, that's when it goes in there. If I talk quiet, anything's gonna affect it. And that's because I have the gain up really loud too. But the light change speed, essentially the lights are just changing. It provides a cool effect. I found that sometimes it helps if you just want to have a different effect. Anyways, so that's just this effect. There's audio intensity. Audio intensity chase is essentially just one light comes on and it flashes around. Intensity fade, it will fade, have dark and light spots fade through the lights. I think you may have seen that, but just in case you didn't, you can see what intensity fade does to the blinders here. Intensity fall off. This actually reminds me, if I do stuff here, you can see that it's gonna take the intensity from here and put it to everything else. I never use this effect. I don't really understand it, and I haven't used it. So that doesn't mean though that it's not useful. One thing I did not mention yet about effects. If I want to apply an intensity chase effect, let's say I want to do this, notice how I have influence at, let's say I have influence at 72%. The top intensity of each one of these lights is going to be 72%, most likely. That's how this effect has been written. But if I take my intensity up, notice how the effect has no effect. That's just because of the way that effects work. They're all additive, not subtractive. So if I have the intensity up, it's not going to take away from the intensity to make an effect happen. I have to have the intensity down because it's only going to add intensity in places. So that's kind of the general idea of those are intensity effects. Circle bounce, circle, pan wave, sine circle, square, swirl, tilt wave. That's all moving effects for the movers. We also have rainbow. That's kind of fun. You can select your rate, offset, influence, and notice how it's just gonna, let's put the rate up so you can see better. It's gonna change the lights in a rainbow type fashion. So that's an overview of effects. Sorry it went a little long. Hopefully that will enable you to make awesome light shows.